Yeah, yours is there, 27th.
It is. I emailed it at 4:41 Tuesday afternoon.
You are brutal.
If my computer ever starts, maybe we'll start the meeting.
Actually, I'm gonna try to pull up Green Communities because sometimes the browsers don't pull it up right.
Yeah. Are we actually live right now and on air?
Yes.
Oh, because we're not online right now. We're not on Zoom. Now's your chance, Dave, all the hot mic stuff if you want.
That's okay, I said my piece Tuesday night. Did you hear it?
Was there, I didn't see a select board posting.
No,
Oh,
I
no.
did it at Parks,
Oh, no, I haven't seen the Parks meeting yet.
directed at.
I saw that. I watched it today.
Do you think it was appropriate?
Well, there's
We're live, so
a lot of things going on.
talk later.
There's so many people here.
Problem is, we're already out on the net.
I know, I'm just.
But you can't get online?
Oh, I'm just waiting for my computer to start. It was about 1,000,000 degrees when I took it out of my bag, so it's clearly unhappy. That's what I get for using my work computer.
Nope, it's definitely not there.
Dave, are you able to get into the meeting? Into our meeting?
I haven't tried, to tell you the truth, yet.
Because if you can run it, then I can just,
Oh, you expect me to be that?
you're the only one, well, I guess Jay could technically do it.
I'm into,
I'm looking for the
I
agenda.
got as far as the agenda, then I didn't bother going any further. Let's see,
Here,
that's
this is called
Facebook, that
agenda.
must be Zoom right there. Do. Okay. I did make it in.
Oh, excellent. Heidi, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am, Evan.
Would you mind making Dave the host?
Sure will.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are we all set in the booth now? Just gonna go with yes. Can you just start the recording, Dave? Top left corner, I think.
Maybe.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Thank you very much. All right, it is 7:04 PM on Thursday, June 27th, and I apologize for calling it late, but I'm calling the Finance Committee meeting to order. My computer is still restarting, so Mr. Passios is currently running our Zoom. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link below to join the public meeting webinar. From a telephone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter webinar ID 881-3627-4720. This agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements from the committee this evening? All right, well, I'm finally on my computer. Are there any public comment from the public? Do we have any public online, Dave?
I lost the screen for Zoom. When I went out, all there was myself and Pack.
Okay. Any public comment from the committee this evening?
Yes,
Go right ahead.
just two kind of FYI items. I follow some of the House bills. In Sentinel and Enterprise, there were two bills in there related to this MBTA Communities Act. One of them was a waiver for towns and cities that had met their 40B criteria threshold. And the second one was related also to towns that had mobile homes to count towards your 40B count. And both of these House bills, both our representatives, Margaret Scarsdale and Mike Schmerich, and pretty much the majority of all the representatives voted no against both of them. So, and the second item is also out of the Sentinel, reading that a $25 million federal grant funding, they call it the RAISE, the RAISE program, Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, having to do with investments in surface transportation infrastructure that have a significant impact on local or regional impact. So Gardner is getting $1.25 million, and was it Salem and Everett are getting money, but it's a $25 million federal grant funding program that's available.
Does it say when that's available through? Or if they're doing multiple rounds of grant raising?
I'm not sure, it probably does, but
All right, thank you very much. Any other public comment?
FYI.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll bring up, and it's just something that I've had in the back of my mind, and I think I brought up during the tail end of the budget season, and I'm following up to see if there's a process that we can move forward with in the state of Massachusetts. I reached out to my contact at Senator Cronin's office to inquire about whether the senator might be on board with sponsoring a bill or tying it onto an existing bill that's in process to allow cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts to assess a personal, a local income tax. For that process to be allowed to happen in this state, the legislature has to do legislation that allows the city and towns to do home rule petitions. So it's an extensive process, and probably is 2 to 3 years once it starts. There was an attempt in 2017 in Boston. It went into committee and it stayed there and died. So I haven't heard back from Senator Cronin's office yet, but I am still going to pursue that.
Thank you. Keep us updated, please. Any other public comment? All right. We have no finance director report this evening. our finance director, is not feeling well, so he is homesick. It's not on the agenda because I forgot to put it on there, but our town manager is on vacation this week, so I took it off. So we do not have a town manager's report as well. If it's okay with the rest of the committee, I would like to kind of flip-flop new business and old business, because I have a member of the public here that's involved in the meeting with Rep. Scarsdale. So I wanted to see if we could have that conversation first and then just go back through. Okay. So moving down to old business, the last item is our meeting with Rep. Scarsdale, her first Middlesex district, and DESI officials to discuss the school budget issues that are before the state. She has settled on a date of the 19th of July from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Groton Town Hall. I will be out of the country, so I've asked Chris if he's available. He said he can be available. So we will at least have one of the two of us there, at least at the table. I believe it's kind of meant to be kept small at the table, but I don't see any reason why the rest of the members of the Finance Committee that want to attend can't attend. I reached out to Mr. Leighton and Mr. Nizzolo, and both of them are in agreement about setting a preliminary letter to Rep. Scarsdale to give a list that I actually have already distributed to the committee and with Ms. Gilman as well, from the school committee specifically. And I kind of wanted to start at least talking about that list and then going through and seeing if there's other items as well. The school committee, Brian is out of office. He's on vacation until July 11th. So he said he's open to a conversation, but we may have to go through Mr. Scolambrini, the vice chair. And Caesar said he's happy to put it on at any time as well. So I think it's probably going to be a letter that kind of comes together either between us and either on our end or on the school committee end or from the general public as well. And then we'll just kind of all sign off on it once we're in agreement. But I don't think there's much that we really need to do beyond come up with a bulleted list. Let me pull that up. Okay. So again, just to kind of give a background on this a little bit more, Rep. Scarsdale is trying to start a coalition in the rural portion of the state, a more rural portion of the state, specifically obviously her first Middlesex district, and then any other districts around. And she wants to start small within her district, meeting with school members, school committee, school department members, finance members, and select board members, and administrative members as well, plus a couple members of the public in each of those, I think 6 towns. After that, and with DESI as well, in order to kind of start the process of identifying what's not working or what needs to be changed or what we can do to address the lack of funding in more rural towns or in non-regional rural towns like Lunenburg. Following this meeting, she is planning to take the conversation out to the 220 districts and have a larger meeting across the state that received either minimum aid or were considered hold harmless. We fell into the minimum aid category. We were out of the hold harmless category. But she wants to address that because if over 2/3 of the districts are minimum aid or hold harmless, it doesn't seem like it's working in terms of increasing because we're getting less than inflationary increases on a yearly basis. I believe this year we increased by 1.1%, so far below inflation. So the list that the school committee has put together includes bus bidding process, state funding, specifically an inflation rider to Chapter 70, revenue from the millionaire's tax, a need for increased local funding and overrides, a focus on Lunenburg, which is unique in a sea of regionals, when I was talking about with the regionalization and Lunenburg being its own district. Rationale for funding through a Lunenburg lens, smart growth, loss of funding, and then the ever-present unfunded mandates. So I would like to invite Mandy Gilman up as well. She has been pivotal in starting this conversation with Rep. Scarsdale and is actually one of the first people to be invited to the conversation.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Mandy Gilman. I'm the vice president of the PTO in town. But my professional career includes, I have been a lobbyist for the last 10 years for different providers, payers, did mental health and addiction lobbying. I worked for Senator Flanagan for a while. State Senator Flanagan, who was before Senator Cronin and before Senator Tran. So I, number one, am very involved and invested because of children in the system, but also feel like I can offer my professional advice and professional help to help the town sort of crystallize what we're asking for. So I have a little bit of advice that I would love to share with the group. I think a letter is excellent. I think that's a great place to start. I think the list looks great. I'd be happy to offer to help you write the letter or, you know, give you some feedback or whatever, just because this is something I used to do all the time in my job. The thing I would say is there's going to be a lot of people at this meeting. So even if we go into the meeting with 8 to 10 things we want to be concerned about, I think as a group, I would recommend that the Lunenburg crew has like 2 things we want to talk about, right? And that really we focus on those 2 things. My professional opinion is that legislators hear 1 to 2 things, and that's what they can focus on, right? There's and I mean, you all, this is some of it's common sense, you know, but I think it's just good to reiterate, right? That like, if we go in there with 15 things, then we're going in with nothing. You know, like having it in writing is good. I think she should see everything we have in writing, the entire list, but going in and talking to her, my opinion would be whoever's in the meeting, we should recommend it, and it shouldn't be me, someone in the town official, you know, a town official or someone who's on the an official committee, kind of speaking for everyone instead of, because she may have an opportunity to let people speak in the meeting. I think we should look organized and be like, we nominate, whether it's the superintendent or the town manager, whoever, you know, Mr. Nizzolo, whoever it is, to say, you know, we've met, these are the 2 things we want to put on your radar, right? These are, and I actually think the top 2 that you mentioned are really great ones. I've talked a little bit to Mr. Scullenbrini on, you know, not at the school committee meeting, but on the phone, and he had a recommendation for like a regulatory change that might work to help with bus contracts. So we can talk about that specifically if you'd like. You know, I just think that could be something that busing costs, my understanding, and you guys look at the numbers, is a huge issue. And there's not any competition, so there's nowhere else to go. So that's definitely a consideration. And I think also just the fact that there's 220 towns that, like you said, didn't get, you know, enough money, and really just focusing on that, like something of the Chapter 70 formula that was redone a few years ago is not working for rural communities. And I think she knows that. I mean, I think we're lucky she's pulling together this group. I think she understands that politically in her, and I don't want to speak for her, but my professional opinion would be that she luckily understands, I mean, it's her entire district did not get much Chapter 70 funding at all, increases. So she knows that this is definitely an issue for all communities. The last thing I would just say is I do think we need to continue to say to her, we are a non-regional school. She is wonderful, and I do think she has like a lot of you know, passion for the project and things like that. Everyone else in her district is a regional school. And, you know, she comes from a regional school district, so just naturally, your mind, you know, she served on the select board of a regional school district, naturally her mind goes to being a regional school district, right? And just reiterating that to her every time we speak to her, I think is not a bad thing, right? You know, whenever we write to her, as a reminder, we are not a regional school. We do not get regional school transportation funding. I say that to her literally every time I talk to her. You know, if we get regional school transportation funding, I mean, you would know better than I how much our transportation costs, but I mean, that would be a few $100,000.
$30,000.
$930,000, right? So if we were getting reimbursed at 75% of that, which is what regional schools get, generally, you know, we would have another $750,000 to spend on schools.
There's your override.
There's the override, right? I mean, that is a significant amount of money Lunenburg isn't getting. And, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I said to Evan, when I was talking to him this spring about something, something I've done in the past is I've done presentations to people about how to be a good advocate. I don't want to tell people stuff they already know, but I have a lot of materials. Like, I think as a town, I think this committee understandably does not want to overspend, and the best way not to do that is to get more state money. I think you all know that, but I think we need to be organized and really aggressive, right, about how we're pulling down more state money. And the schools Chapter 70 is the biggest one. So I don't know if you have any questions or want to add anything, but that's my 5-minute pitch.
Thank you. I do real quickly just want to make sure we're on the record. I believe mistakenly said during the budget season that we were a hold harmless district, which we are not a hold harmless district.
Okay.
I was corrected, thankfully, by the school department and school committee. Because of the Student Opportunity Act, it actually raised us out of hold harmless and put us into minimum aid. Doesn't give us a ton more money,
Yeah.
but we get a little bit more money. So I think we got $96,000 more last year.
Instead of nothing. Some school districts got nothing?
Hold harmless gives you a minuscule increase.
Like a tiny bit
Right.
more, okay, yeah. So this is something, I wasn't a Chapter 70 expert, I don't think anyone is. Oh my gosh, it's so confusing. I watched a video on the Mass Municipal website. Actually, it was pretty interesting for someone like me who's kind of interested in this stuff. But even that was pretty confusing about how the formula is planned. That's something we could think about. So, when you lobby a legislator, the more specific your ask, the better. If we could, I think this is ambitious for 2 weeks from now, but if we could say the thing that needs to be changed in the formula is, you need to take the formula and you need to look at, inflation is a great example, but instead of saying to the representative, you should fix the formula about inflation, paid lobbyists get paid to say how that's going to happen, right? And the town doesn't have that, right? Which I get that. But that's why people are successful, because then you say to the representative, the way you're going to fix the problem, right, is you're going to change this number in the formula and you're going to add it this way, right? And the problem is Chapter 70 is so complicated. But I think if a few of us got in a room and looked at it, we might be able to come up with something, maybe even in August, right? Because I think, my understanding is her timeline would be, right, obviously not for this school cycle, possibly for next budget cycle. The legislature will reconvene in January. There will be new chairs, there'll be all new stuff, but she might even file a bill at that point if there was a bill to change it. But I think we're aiming for next year's budget.
So I would open it up to the committee for thoughts,
Yeah.
questions.
As I've been sitting here listening, and I understand that the subjects that you just discussed are the biggest drain on our budget.
Yep.
Or biggest challenges on our budget is on the school side.
Yep.
But one of my frustrations when I see the PR burst come out of Boston, and, we passed this funding bill and that funding bill
Yeah.
and this for infrastructure and all this other stuff, but the only ones eligible for it are lower income cities and communities. I think it's prudent that we need to communicate that the people in the middle are suffering also.
I think that's a great idea. So one of the things when I worked in the legislature, and now it was 15 years ago, but gateway cities were a huge focus of, and you've probably heard this, right? That the state invested a lot of money in gateway cities, and they had specific criteria that I think it was the Patrick administration set up. You had to be a certain population, and and it was based on basically old mill cities, right? That were losing population, and what could we invest in them? And when I worked for Senator Flanagan, she would be immensely frustrated because Gardner didn't fall, and she represented Gardner, and it didn't fall into this category, right? So we worked a lot on that. Fitchburg and Leominster did, but Gardner didn't. I think Rep. Scarsdale has the idea that rural communities like Lunenburg and Groton and Dunstable and even these places that she represents are our own category. So I would recommend we think about that from a storytelling perspective, right? How are we telling a story of communities like Lunenburg, right? And maybe that's not something that she can fix in a year, right? But how are we setting an agenda? Like if you were my client, I would say that. How are we setting an agenda to think about rural communities? And I wouldn't even say, I don't know if I would refer to Lunenburg as a rural community, but I wouldn't call it a bedroom community. I think thinking about that, and then thinking about other communities that are kind of like Lunenburg, setting up connections with other finance committees and other school committees and other select boards, which I think the Mass Municipal Association does a pretty good job at, but they have a lot of very diverse communities, right? They have a hard time representing everyone. I mean, the more diverse you get when you run an association like that, the harder it is to actually do your job. So I would recommend, I think that's something I would be happy to help you with. Like, I live here, I work here, I love this town. Because I think that's something that we could definitely push. And we could talk to Senator Cronin and Rep. Kuchmarek, because I don't want to waste them. They are both, all three of them, I will say this from a professional standpoint, very well liked, very well respected in Boston. So that's a good thing. We want to use them.
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
Any
Guys have other thoughts?
Questions?
What's the history of Chapter 70? Do you know when? No, I mean, when?
It's been a long time. So I know I'm being taped, so God, I'll probably be wrong. But my understanding is, right, there was a lawsuit against the state that low-income communities were not getting the same, the kids in low-income communities were not getting funded, and this was like the 80s. They were not getting the same education in cities and towns that communities that were able to contribute more money, right, to their education base. So that's kind of where the Chapter 70 formula came from. It's been redone a few times. It was redone maybe, I want to say 3 years ago. It was pretty recently. And so that's what this problem really has stemmed from, is that actually I think they were putting more money into other low-income communities again and trying to balance the formula. And I would say this is an unintended consequence, right? This is not, I don't know that the legislators who created the formula knew this was going to happen so soon, right? That there was going to be all these communities that didn't get as much money. And the only good news here is that there's a lot of towns that are really mad about this. So I do see, if you had said to me 2 years ago, professionally, will they touch the Chapter 70 formula? I would have said, I think that's a high bar. They literally just did it. It took 10 years last time to change it. But with 222 or 220 communities that didn't get more money, I actually think probably there is an appetite maybe to make some changes. So that's a good thing.
I think it'll be tricky though, because the Student Opportunity Act is in year 4 of 6.
Yes, it's a phase-in.
Right.
So that is definitely an issue. So one of the things, maybe you can answer this. So during the budget debate, Senator Cronin and a few other people were telling me there was a minimum aid increase per student. So basically, that was the hold harmless communities, or was that do you know?
No, it was everyone. It was the per pupil spending was increased from $50 to $100 or something.
Right, so basically, every student, the town got $50 extra, even if the formula didn't allow it. So on the floor of the Senate and the House, and they're still working on their final budget, they did increase that, so that, but if you take $50 times how many students are there in Lunenburg?
I think it's 1,600. It wasn't much.
It's not really that much money, I think the other place that I would look at is the cherry sheet for everything. When you're lobbying, again, specific wise, if you look at the cherry sheet, the different pots of money, and I know we lost that smart growth money this year, which was really disappointing. I don't know enough about it, I just know that we lost it. But those are the areas that a legislator can really affect in the budget, right away, right? If there's a bucket of money that's coming to you through the cherry sheet, that is an area that's primed to say to a legislator, we want more money in the special ed, line item, or in, unrestricted government, obviously, unrestricted government aid, whatever they call it now. UGA, yeah.
An acronym.
Yeah, it's a great acronym. So, that's the thing. I think putting more stuff in writing, which is a long process, but is something that I think legislators respond to. And I always tell people the squeaky wheel gets the grease. when you do this as your work, like, you're reaching out to people all the time. And you're always kind and helpful and, like, whatever, but it's always like, hey, did we do that? Hey, how's that going? Okay, what other information can I get you? Can I help you think about this another way? Which all of you have full-time jobs, so that's not easy to do. But, everyone who does this work in town does, besides the town manager, so it's not easy. But I think that's where we need to go.
Just do it while we're at work, that's all.
Exactly. Well, our bosses are paying us, right? Luckily, my husband's my boss. So.
Exactly. As far as the smart growth goes, it was a student count out of the smart growth apartments. And
Yes.
we lost, I think, 2 or 3 students, and that brought us below the limit.
It brought you below the limit.
But we were one of 2 towns that have ever received money for smart growth, apparently.
Really?
I think it was us and Lincoln, I believe.
It's a significant amount of money, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right, but I had also heard that we got knocked off and there was a new community coming on.
Oh, that came on
At the
instead.
Association of Finance Committees.
Yeah.
We talked about that briefly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very few communities had applied and
Even
gotten-
reached
gotten
that.
income coming in. So, I mean, we were fortunate. And the answer from Sean Cronin in the Department of Public Services, when he asked, is anything being looked at in regards to what happened in Lunenburg? And he said at this point, flat out, no.
Yeah.
That was a few months ago, but I don't think we're gonna see much movement in
Probably
that.
aren't going to see that money.
No, because it's a simple calculation. If you fall below the number,
Right.
it's
Right.
it.
That's why-
Didn't Chapter 70 also, though, work into that calculation? So with our bump in Chapter 70, that also kind of played into it a little bit?
I don't-
I thought I had heard
It's possible.
that's part of it.
I don't know how the smart growth calculation is done. I just know that it was simply down to the number of people, number of
Yeah.
students that were in that community.
That's why grant money is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
go right ahead.
It's why grant money is so hard and why even though Chapter 70 is a big lift, it's like, even in my opinion, if we got more Chapter 70 money, that would help across the whole budget, right? I mean, obviously, the schools want that money, but that also, it affects the entire town budget, right? So, but it's a big pot. That's the other problem. Like when the legislature moves to change the formula, sort of like you never know the unintended consequences, right? But yeah, I personally still think we should be pushing on transportation funding. I've gotten no traction, but I just personally feel like it's unfair to our kids in Lunenburg. It wasn't their choice not to regionalize. So why are other school districts getting paid for their busing and we aren't?
Right.
That would make a big difference.
Well, and it's also going to get a lot worse because our bus contract ends this year.
Right, it's going to go up.
It increased contractually a little under $100,000 this past year to the FY25. And then next year, when D is the only company that we have bid,
Yeah.
they have full authority. And they've already stated that they will not remove a bus from our contract.
Right, I know, because the superintendent during the whole budget debate, I remember her saying, really trying to get us down one bus, right, to save that money.
They said absolutely not, and what are you going to do about it?
So, Mr. Scolombrini's suggestion, I did look at his bill, or it's not even a bill, his is a regulatory change. He thinks that if the RMV or DOT has to inspect the buses and they have to give them certification, if they require some bidding information, that would at least require companies like D to go out and get other bids, and it would compete. So in that sense, if that's what we're going to ask for, I think we should push with them. This isn't even a bill. You don't even have to do anything in a bill. This is a regulatory change that the DMV could do or RMV could do. And so in that example, what I would say next is we would ask, so if we present that idea to the representative and she's interested, then I think we should ask the representative to meet with us and meet with DOT at the same time, right? And say, this is something my town is really interested in. That's what I would advise, like that we, then we say, okay, if the rep's on board, if we could even get both reps or Senator Cronin, all of us to meet with DOT Or we could go as a town to go meet with them, but I don't know that that would work, you know?
In order for it to be a regulatory change, though, that's got to be across the state still. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
So,
So other towns, so then what you would do is, right, so say we got our reps on board, and they were like, this is something we think would be a good change. We could do a letter. I think you had said there's finance committee, like a group of finance committee people who
Yes.
meet together.
That covers all cities and towns across the
Exactly, one of you
state.
could write an email or to the whole listserv or whatever and say, this is a regulatory change we're pushing our legislator to do. Contact your legislator and ask them to. One thing we could ask Rep. Scarsdale to do is put together a letter and ask other legislators to sign on. So one way they do that is, so if we get Rep. Scarsdale on board, and she writes a letter to DOT or the RMV or whoever, you know, whoever the regulatory body is, then you email all the other finance directors, tell them, ask your legislator to sign on. So then if Rep. Scarsdale sends this letter, this is all hypothetical, right? But if she sends this letter and she gets 10 or 15 of her colleagues around the state to sign on, that might be a way to get the RMV to think about it or look at it, right? So that's the kind of stuff that, it takes work, but I'm happy to help with it.
It was definitely frustrating to hear the business manager from Monty Tech say that they're working with 3 or 4 bus companies for
Yes.
their contracts.
Yes.
I mean, that floored me.
Because that just brings, I mean, they have to be competitive when they bid, right? I mean, that's what Mr. Scalabrini was telling me, because again, I'm not as deep in the details, but he was telling me about how it's just really, there's no competition.
Yep.
Um,
I've told this story, and I'll be very brief with it, but many years ago, when I was still in the school system, a local group got together and did their homework and drove all the routes and so on and so forth,
Yeah.
and they put forth a proposal that was 2 buses less than the previous contract. People kept saying, oh, you can't do it, you can't do it. He said, yes, we've run the numbers and we've done the homework. They got the contract and the town saved a sizable amount of money.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting when the superintendent because I went to obviously a lot of meetings during the override stuff, she said she has encouraged the athletic director to look into other options because, which I think is smart, because the athletic director, you know, the buses go and they just sit there for hours. Even my kids are going to a summer program in Shirley this summer, and they use the buses, and it went up considerably, and I'm pretty sure that's why, right? That the buses went up. That it's not that the staff is getting paid more. It's that it costs more money for them to bus the kids to the swimming places and stuff. So, I mean, that would be a huge help. The other idea I had on that, which this is a little bit wacky, Mr. Waters, but so for 766 schools, which are special ed, a specific type of special ed schools. OSD, which is the Operational Services Division, is a regulatory agency, and they actually set the OSD rates. So schools that are special ed schools, they can't just charge whatever they want. There's a rate, I don't actually know enough about how the rate is set, but there's a state agency that says, your rate can go up 2.5% each year, something like that. So there is a precedent for the state to regulate vendors, school vendors, that need to work with schools. So I don't know, I think that could be something if the bus companies had to get their rates approved by OSD. It's kind of a wacky idea, but I don't know, it would be, there is precedent for it. We could, if Rep. Scarsdale didn't like the idea about the regulations, we could try that too. I could find the OSD information about that. That would be pretty easy. It's 766 schools, I think.
I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that for you.
So how do we feel about cutting it down to 2 main topics rather than just 2, 4, 6, 8 of them? Not removing all 8, but
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
kind of a top 2 to push for.
Yeah, it's kind of like coming up with talking points for, political,
Absolutely. That's exactly what I would
yeah.
say.
So, yeah, I totally agree with that, and just make sure that the overall ask, i.e. the complete list, is not, either not communicated or thrown in the trash barrel, you know. Push that agenda with the complete list, but the talking points for the public meetings and stuff are the three most important, 2 or 3 most
Yeah,
important.
3 would be fine. I think, it just definitely top
Right.
things. And I don't think you have to walk away from putting it in the letter. I don't want you to think that. I just think vocally,
I do wonder, though, with the busing conversation, because we are the only district that is not regionalized, how that's going to be for a conversation with 5 other towns.
Do you recall on the email she sent us what exactly, so the representative did send an email to the group that's invited to the meeting.
I think I forwarded it to the committee.
You guys might have seen it. I know I'm not on the mic. She said something specific about busing she wanted to talk about, so maybe we should make sure we're responding to what she... I feel like... It was the original meeting invite, I think. Yes, so this is what she sent for topics. Regional school district transportation, but then she wrote in parentheses, affects 5 or 6 towns. 5 of 6 towns. But she wrote not receiving 100% reimbursement. No bid contracts, could DESE administer contracts, right? A seat for every child, I don't know what that means, what she's referring to, do you?
What is it?
A seat for every child?
Not sure.
And then she wrote bus requirements for K through 12 for regionals, only mandated K through 6 for comprehensive, sorry.
That seat for every child is familiar to me, but I don't remember
I
if
could
it was a
Google it.
regulation that came out or exactly what it is, yeah. And I think it does affect how you calculate how many buses you need, but I'm not sure. And who's eligible for busing.
So, something I might suggest to you, Mr. Waters, and most possible Mr. Newslow and the group from the town, is to send an email back to Rep. Scarsdale and say, thank you for inviting us to this meeting. We're looking forward to hearing about all the things on your list. Is it possible we could talk about the stuff that affects all 6 towns first? I'm a little afraid, like, if they start on the regional school transportation conversation,
2
and the meeting is only 2 hours, we'll spend 2 hours talking about regional school transportation. So I think maybe making a point before the meeting, while we welcome a conversation about school transportation, because it is something that affects us as well, we would really like to make sure we have a discussion on hold harmless, minimum required contribution, etc. And then you could even say, like, no bid contracts, that affects us as well. So, I mean, one of the things she's saying is that regional schools don't get 100% reimbursement. They usually get whatever the legislature sets, somewhere between 75 and 90%. But I used to be told when I worked in the legislature, the reason they don't want to give 100% reimbursement is then the bus companies would just continue to go up. Because if they know the regional schools are getting 100% reimbursement, I mean, it's even less pressure on them, because they're just getting state money.
And that's probably one of the driving factors for more than one bus company working with the regional districts rather than individuals.
Yes, it's a great point, right? More people bidding on the regional contracts.
Why should we bother with one town that's not going to get the state funding, where we can go to a regional district and know that they're going to get 75 to 90%, so.
I mean, that's something your colleagues on the school committee is also, like, before the budget process next year, I was going to recommend to Mr. Scullambrini and Mr. Layton that maybe reaching out to other non-regional schools and coordinating a letter to all their legislators, because there are other non-regional schools out there, but them using their connections through other school committees to maybe put something together in January before the budget process even starts, that's like a standard request to meet with your legislator about how non-regional schools don't get any money. I'm sure there's other, I can't think of any around here, but, well, Athol, right?
Maybe.
Winchendon, they're not regionalized.
Sure.
Leominster, Fitchburg, I mean, they don't get any money for transportation.
But they're getting a lot of Chapter 70 money.
They're getting a lot of Chapter 70 money. So someone like Athol or Winchendon or something like that might be more comparable,
Yeah.
But I won't put that on your list, I'll put it on Tony's list.
I am curious to know
how
how
are
many
you?
different school districts there are in the state of Massachusetts that are not regionalized, what the ratio would be,
It is a good question, and I think,
and how many of those are towns versus cities.
yeah, like how many towns, because cities do get more Chapter 70 money, that's just, because of the formula, whatever. So,
Yeah, I want to look into that now.
We're almost there for that population.
yeah.
Want to be part of the switch?
You want to go to city government?
I'd want to talk to Framingham first and see what their challenges
Oh my
have
goodness,
been.
but Framingham's the largest, they were the largest town in the Commonwealth. My husband's actually from Framingham, so.
They flipped over to a city, didn't
They
they?
did,
Yeah.
they did. They changed to a city, but they were the largest town in the
Oh,
Commonwealth
okay.
for a long,
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the numbers already, we could switch to a counselor system, but then we
Well,
would-
I saw an official number that was not high enough. And-
Only
and-
takes
You're not a
like-
fan of town meeting, Mr. Passios? We wouldn't get to go to we wouldn't get to go to town meeting anymore if we
I thought
didn't
it was
have
only like 5,600 people. I thought it was a really low bar for
to
switching.
switch to town government.
To
I mean, to switch to city
city
government. Excuse me.
councilors, yeah.
It's a low number for switching to representative town government, but city is
Okay.
like 12,000.
But you would
And
still
I
have
don't
to
think we're officially 12,000. I saw a number that was 11,800 or something like that.
Yeah, yes, I think you're right. It's at least representatives for town meeting,
Right.
which we're well beyond that number.
Yeah, some towns do. I mean, I know just because my husband's from Framingham, I know they used to have representative town meeting before that, which is interesting. So I do know one comment I want to make is I know that the open meeting law prevents some conversation, prevents more collaboration than I sort of anticipated when I started getting involved with town government. I'm not always sure it's the best. I understand the concept, but, so I'm more than willing to come to more meetings if that's a helpful way to participate, just because I know there's rules about what you all can talk about together.
As long as you're emailing 3 or fewer,
Yeah?
you're fine.
3 members of one committee.
Well, 3 members of this committee, it has to be below a quorum.
Okay,
As long
so
as it's
can I
below a quorum,
email-
it does not break.
One member of the select, all the people who are coming to this meeting.
Could be
Who could
emailed.
be one member of the select board, one member of the finance committee, one member of, I don't know actually who's going to be there, but whoever was on this invitation, that I'm okay with.
Yes, and you can send an email to the full committee.
Yeah.
You just can't then have correspondence back and forth.
You guys
with
can't
the
reply and stuff.
Right, we'd have to reply individually versus reply all.
Okay.
And
Well, that's
your
good to know.
replies would then have to go to that person or whoever replied as well.
And some chairs prefer that it goes to the chair and they disseminate it to the committee, so,
I
yeah, you'll find out after you send the first one or two.
I
Don't worry, I'm
dislike
not-
that entirely because then I forget what I've sent and what I haven't
Yeah,
sent.
no,
I'm sure
I
many of
get
you
it.
have seen me around town the last few months. I'm not shy, so if people tell me, what to do or where to go, but I really do want to help. So I feel very committed to this town. I'm not ready to run for office. I have little kids. I don't have the time commitment
Yeah.
to do the kind of work you guys are doing, and I really respect that. But I want to help. So that was actually going to be one of my last suggestions, which has nothing to do with school funding. But I know they're looking for a new town manager, and it seems like a lot of the town committees that are formed include, the short-term committees are formed with members of every other committee. And I want to put in a vote for maybe you should let a layperson be on some of those committees. Maybe there are people in town, maybe not me, but other people, who could commit a shorter period of time to a committee. Like, for example, if they were hiring a town manager and you want to have one finance committee, one school committee, one select board. I don't know how you'd choose the last person. I guess that would be, but someone who was a short term, right? Maybe someone who can't commit to one night a week for the rest of their lives, but, could come for a 5-month period and attend regularly. So I just put that out there. I was going to send the select board an email too.
Keep that in mind and send it in as a suggestion when we move forward with seating a charter review committee. It's coming down the pipe.
That's the
There's
exact
pressure
kind of committee.
for that to happen.
Exactly, that I think someone may contribute to, but maybe doesn't want to be on a committee that runs, for 2 years or 3
The
years.
limitations, most of the limitations are written within the charter, and that's
Okay.
why that you don't have members of the public on these two committees that are going to replace the town manager, because it's specifically listed in there who's on those committees.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't read the charter.
Stretch this conversation out just a little bit further.
Yeah.
I've been looking into, and I told the search committee that I would make some contacts up in New Hampshire. The town of Lancaster, New Hampshire, which is the county seat for Coas County, was without a town manager for, I believe, 7 or 8 months. They just hired a new town manager. And interestingly enough, in their regulations, their search committee is one town employee, and the rest were all members of the public with specific specialties. So,
So, not always a good idea.
right, and part of that
Yeah,
is
no,
because they don't, part of it is because their form of government up there is a bit different. You don't have as many committees like we do in the
Yeah.
town of Lunenburg in Massachusetts, but it opened it up to more of the public for many things.
Yeah, and I just think encouraging people to be involved in government is important, and sometimes it's daunting to think about it like a long-term commitment, but maybe on a short-term commitment. For example, my mom is serving on the 300th committee or whatever, and I think she's excited to do that, and also that's like a time, I know that's like a few years, but, it's leading up to one thing, right? And I think that's like a good
And
way
then
to be
it's
involved. And then it's over.
For another 100 years.
Right, yeah, for another 100 years.
Or 50.
Or 50. Exactly. She's very excited about it, so.
Mr. Gray, just to catch you up, we are completely out of order. We're on the
Yeah, sorry about that.
talking about the conversation with Rep. Scarsdale.
And my name's Mandy Gilman. I was invited to the meeting because I'm the vice president of the PTO in town. So I wanted to coordinate with folks so that we're not asking for different things.
And she'll be at the meeting as well with
Yeah,
Rep.
I'll be at the
Scarsdale.
meeting. So,
Any other thoughts or conversation about this for now?
No, I think we stretched it out as far as it could.
that's fine. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for your work, and
For right
send me
now.
an email or call me
This
if
is
you need
still
me.
very much alive.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. So I think it would be helpful then I think at least discuss what individually our kind of topics are that we want to push for, that at least that we want to recommend to push for, that I can then bring to the school committee and to the select board to kind of get their take. I agree. I think we should still put all 10. If there are other ones that are not on this list, I'm happy to add those as well, or we can certainly discuss them. But I do at least want to make sure that the finance committee has their kind of top 2 that we're putting forward. Let me pull it back up again.
As I said earlier, I don't know how we properly spin it, but I think we need to start the dialogue of, you're bringing all these spending bills out of the legislature, and you're supporting, again, like I said, underperforming and lower income communities, and leaving the ones in the middle, such as Lunenburg, out in the cold, as far as I'm concerned, with their infrastructure funding bills and things like that. Yeah, we qualify for some of them, but at the end of the day, we come out with 2% of the, total amount appropriated within that bill because of a formula that penalizes us for our affluence, or however you want to put it.
So why don't we then go down the line? Do you have the list in front of you by any chance?
I do not. I've been trying to keep Zoom open because it closed on me twice.
Send that to us?
Yep, I did.
I mean, from my perspective, I'm fine with the, biggest 2 priorities on the school side, which, as Mandy mentioned, Chapter 70 affects the whole town, so definitely on board with that. And the busing, that's more our local issue than it is for the other communities, but it still needs to be, we need to push that issue and get some help to get out of the situation we're in now with lack of competition and so on.
Okay. Would you then go, so it's listed on here as state funding add inflation rider to Chapter 70. Are you more interested in kind of looking at Chapter 70 to try and find a specific lever to mess with, or kind of going at it more for saying we need to just add this because there isn't an inflationary portion to Chapter 70? Or do you want to stay non-specific and just say Chapter 70?
Good point. I mean, the easy way is to just say Chapter 70.
But that's not the why and how.
Yeah. I mean, where she brought it forward, I think the adjustment, agree with her on the cost of living adjustment or whatever she's proposing, that piece. Maybe we get on board with that piece that she brought to us.
Okay.
And if you remember too, when we met with our delegation, I think a couple of different times, there were comments made that until the Student Opportunity Act gets through the next couple of years, there's not a lot of appetite for changing Chapter 70. But I think the conversation needs to start now, because it's going to take that long to make the changes anyway.
And Rep. Scarsdale has reiterated that after the fact as well, to me directly, that there isn't much appetite for doing anything to Chapter 70 while the Student Opportunity Act is still only 2/3 of the way through its rolling out process.
I'm just going to add,
Go.
I think that talking about like some sort of an inflation rider then or something is a good idea, because that way she can argue to the powers that be, this isn't changing the structure of Chapter 70, right? We understand you want you want to see how this pushes out, but you have to help my communities in the interim, right? Like an inflationary or something of that sort would at least allow the legislators who formulated the new Chapter 70 to still claim
and bring it
victory, right?
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
And
no,
bring it
it's
across as it was an unanticipated
Exactly.
strain because of the inflation that we've seen over the past 5 years.
Yes, that's what I would absolutely do.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Russell, do you have any top two that you would go after, or that you're kind of supporting more?
I would also just do the first two,
Okay.
busing and the inflation rider.
Mr. Gray, do you have any idea what we're talking about with this list?
I do remember, I don't have it in front of me, but
I just emailed it again
Okay.
to everyone, just the list specifically from the school department or school
Right.
committee. And Ms. Gilman's suggestion was to send the entire list in a letter, but to go to the meeting with two that we want to push. Rather
Well-
than trying to push 10.
right, I agree with the busing, as from what we heard from everybody, from the school committee and others, that, and it's not just us, it's other towns too. To me, the most important thing is that our representative is one voice. However, there are a lot of communities like us who, if you just read the news or look what's going on, are going through the same thing we are. So they have representatives who might not be our rep. And so there's going to be more pressure from those people. So what are the things that they are going to be pushing for, we should be pushing for too, because we'll be able to get the mass, the right amount of mass. Because it takes pressure from the hinterlands is probably going to be hard, but I think we can do it. So busing in the inflation, maybe it might be a less of a problem over the next few years, as, if inflation goes back down, we don't know yet, but if it does, then it'll be an issue, but it's also a long-term problem. But I think that, I think I think it would be good for our representative to find out what other communities are focusing on. And if they're focusing on those things and we think they're important, then we should also do it. So that's the other thing I would say.
And I mentioned this at the start of the meeting. She is intending to do that already. She's starting with her 6 districts within the first Middlesex district. And then in the fall, she's going to invite all 220 districts that were minimum aid districts to have a large-scale conversation to try and form some type of coalition to then bring forward to the legislature to do exactly that, to kind of speak with more authority and more, ideally more power.
Right. If they can get some kind of, 20 or 30 or 50 representatives who all are speaking the same minds, they'll have a lot more power than if in our town, our 2 people just are saying something. So that's important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
At least that's what I heard in history class in high school.
Mr. Simeoni?
Yeah, I would say, the top 2.
Top 2 as well?
Bus-
Okay.
Yeah, the bus bidding process, state funding, and then smart growth funding.
Busing and smart growth?
No, busing, the state funding for
Okay.
rider, and then for third, smart growth.
Got it. And I'd have to agree as well. I think busing is going to be critical. Of our $32.7 million school budget this year, which included Chapter 70, but doesn't include the override, I realize, our busing was about $1 million of that. So it's 1/32 of it, but it's still a chunk, and it's going to go up and up and up. And it would be nice to get 75% of that back, or even 25% of that back. I don't think that's an unrealistic ask. And inflation, I'm curious to see, and I need to go back through the Chapter 70 calculation to make sure there isn't an inflation portion that's not directly built into the calculation, but is sort of at the starting point of. I'm not sure if they take last year's and apply a inflationary increase and then go through the process. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure before we send a letter out that says, hey, do something you're already doing.
Well, since we're getting in most towns get the calculations are irrelevant, we just get the default number anyway, so it's, maybe it should be part of the default number.
Right, our $96,000 should then have a, whatever the
Right.
state's inflation or federal inflation calculation was on top of that.
Yeah, one thing I think we could consider, and I'd be happy to help you with, is Mrs. Archambault had mentioned she had talked to a woman who works at the Mass School Committee Association, or someone very involved there, who might be able to help us pinpoint exactly what, instead of us, you're very good at math, I am not. So clowning around with the formula, maybe she could give us a suggestion. The other expertise, we could ask Mary Foyle, actually, who runs the teachers union in town. The MTA just has a lot of resources, and they have a lot of expertise in some of these things. Maybe she could point us in the direction of someone who could take a look at our formula and, and give us a real concrete suggestion is the other.
Agreed, yes. Yeah, it was Tracy from the Massachusetts Association of School
I've heard
Committees.
Tracy's name before, I don't know her, but I think she would be someone good to reach out to.
She wrote a great email, so.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
trust
I've heard her name before in the legislature, so.
I now trust her implicitly.
Exactly.
Mandy, we supposedly had Chapter 70 explained to us as a committee, I think at least 3 times,
We have
top to bottom over the past 5 years, and we still don't totally understand
I
it.
watched this presentation.
It was a great presentation.
It was quite good, but I can't remember a single bit of it
Right.
right now. I watched it a few weeks ago and I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, I got it for just before our meeting with the school committee, and then it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone now, so.
Okay. So I'll send a note off to Ms. Tavares and Mr. Menard as well, just to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page and let them know what the idea is. And then I will reach out to, I guess, Mr. Scombrini and Mr. Leighton, since Mr. Leighton's on vacation for a little while.
And then I was going to try to meet with Mr. Nizzolo and Mr. Leighton before our representative meetings the week of the 11th. But if he's back on the 11th, that's going to kind of be our next meeting is that day. So I would like to at least get something kind of down. I'm not sure when the next school committee meeting is, but I believe the next select board meeting is going to be after. Not sure if they're meeting this coming Tuesday or not.
School committee have one, I think they have one on the calendar for next week.
They met yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, so they're done till September, aren't they?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they can always do a straw poll.
I'm happy to help you draft something if that's helpful, and then.
That would be wonderful, because I can do math. I can't do words.
Obviously, you guys would all, but I'll write you a sort of what I think it should look like.
That would be great. Thank you. And I'm not sure if the select board is meeting on the 2nd, but I would expect them to probably meet on the 9th, which would work well.
9th is the next meeting.
Okay, so then we could meet on the 11th, and that gives us the 15th, that gives us kind of that week to really finish it and send it out beforehand, because I'd like to
Yep.
send it a week in advance if possible, and then send it again. All right, before we close that out, any more conversation on the meeting with Rep. Scarsdale? Mr. Gray, it is the 19th, July 19th, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Groton Town Hall. And they didn't say that we can't have every member of the Finance Committee there. They just invited the chairs of the departments. So I don't see any reason why everyone else can't go.
I think as it was suggested before, even if we do all decide to attend, or a percentage of us, other than the chair, that the chair is going to be the one speaking for, should be the one speaking for the commission.
For us,
Unless
it'll
it's
be-
decided in a couple more meetings that it's going to be shrunk down to even less than that, like maybe the select board chair or whatever.
I think it'll depend upon whether or not we do have a unified document that we're sending forward.
Right, I agree.
Kind of counter to what we did with the legislature in the spring. I'd like to actually have an agreed upon list that all departments that are presenting put together.
Yep.
So, since I missed this, is this going to be multiple, all her towns?
It'll be
Season
6 towns. She's inviting finance chairs, select board chairs, school committee chairs, school superintendents, town managers, and I believe and I think school finance directors.
And random.
And,
Like.
and Mandy. And also DESI officials as well.
Yeah.
For 2 hours. It's
So-
going to be tough.
If we have more people, would that be counterproductive to have more people there? Is there going to be like a stage where all those people are going to be there and then other people can watch? Are like community people there allowed to be there and sit around, or?
The room is TBD from the last email. It's just at the Groton Town Hall, which I've never been to. I have a feeling it's going to be limited to speaking with whomever is actually on the invitation list, but I don't think there's any reason why we can't have other members there. But it's just, we would have to convene a meeting if we have a quorum.
We can be the gallery that's booing or cheering.
Exactly.
It just made me think of, that's a great question, Mr. Gray, when you if you end up taking my advice and sending Ms. Scarsdale an email about, not maybe focusing on the regional schools first, another thing you might want to say to her is, Lunenburg would like to be as prepared as possible. What can we expect? Are the DESI officials going to present? Are you expecting each town to make a statement? I just think it would be good to kind of know, because there's going to be a lot of people there, I think is what I'm...
Right.
There's going to be a lot of people
I'm
who want to be...
wondering if that's going to be counterproductive, of having a lot of people, everybody wants to talk, everybody wants to say something, and that's not
Exactly.
the best way to get.
I would think that that's why I do think writing a letter is important. And Mr. Gray, I'm sorry, you missed the beginning, but I used to be a lobbyist. I am actually still a registered lobbyist, so I do this work a lot. That's why I'm here giving, I guess, advice. I think putting a letter together is important before the meeting because there are going to be a lot of people there. So if for some reason we don't get, that she doesn't get to what we are, we've already at least weighed in, like this is, and I would CC the DESI officials on the email, on the letter, because they're going to be there. And then that's why I think we should have a unified voice. But I don't really know what to expect. I haven't been to a meeting, my boss never had a meeting like this. This is actually very brave of her, honestly, to have all these people in one room with the DESI officials. I think one thing I would absolutely say is Rep. Scarsdale does not screw around. We should be very happy that she is actively, there are a lot of legislators, God bless them. Throughout my career, there's all types of legislators, I'll just leave it at that, right? I mean, she is really here to fix this problem, so we should take advantage of that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Sorry, I keep getting off.
No, that's okay. Eventually you'll end up on a stage.
Yeah, no thank you.
All right, any more discussion on this topic for tonight at least? Okay. I will send something around then after I reach out to the school committee and the select board just to make sure, just kind of give them an update and just make sure that they're okay with the same thing. And then I will rely on Ms. Gilman for writing a fancy letter.
You guys have letterhead, right? We'll put it on your letterhead.
I can send you what goes on, what somebody made who knows how long ago for us. I don't know what it is. All right, going backwards to new business. So the first one we have on here is to review the budget process and suggestions for improvement. So I was literally just pulling off of our list that we had kind of organized into A's and B's and C's, and these were the top two. So my intention is to kind of have these sit on here and move down to old business until we decide that we're either done with them or dropping them. I don't have a direct plan for this. I just kind of wanted to open up and see where the conversation heads, and then we can start funneling down. I think we're sort of all in agreement for the most part that the budget process is a little bit too compressed and back-end heavy for what needs to be done to actually get a holistic and appropriate view of the budget prior to town meeting.
That subject was broached in the capital planning meeting a week or two ago. Chris would have probably reported that if he was here tonight. And that's their frustration too, because they're don't feel that there is enough time for them to vet the projects properly. And, a couple of years in a row, there's been some feeling with different members, including myself when I was still on there, that, I'm not sure we got the priorities right because we were so rushed. So there is conversation. The challenge, one of the big challenges is that the search committee is hoping, now they're just hoping, they have no idea how long this is going to take, but they're hoping to wrap up and be able to hire a town manager in less than 6 months, targeting 4 months. Be fantastic if it works, because obviously we're going to have a new town manager coming in right in the heart of the beginning of budget season.
Well, and our interim town manager position is only offered at a 3-month position. And last I heard, which was as of yesterday, no one has applied for that. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if that takes it down the road or.
In effect, 6 months if need be, but
Could be extended.
it could,
Right.
right. It can be extended another 3 months, but,
6 months from today is December 27th.
right,
Which is not a good time to start.
yep.
3 months from today is still tough. With capital planning, though, I guess as they do not have to choose the number of projects that apply to the final list, where is the budgetary pressure for them?
Budgetary pressure is built into the charter and the tasks of the town manager to bring forward particular reports, numbers, so on and so forth, on a set schedule.
Okay.
So that's what pushes it back so early.
I
Okay.
And I don't remember the dates, you know, it gets printed out every year, and I
Okay. so the-
forget it every year.
So it's because the charter requires the capital planning committee to have a finalized list to be able to present to town manager for her to, or for them to put into their budget.
Right, but that scenario, there was a little bit of pushback between a couple of the members in that conversation as to, so, you know, there was a rationale that the schedule on the surface didn't make sense why it was compressed that, or pushed that early into the process, where it doesn't really get finalized for another 3 or 4 months after capital planning's done with it. So I think there's going to be some conversation back and forth about that.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't you simply just have tiers and say, we have a $500,000 tier, we have a $1 million tier, we have a $2 million tier, and
But-
the town manager can just work off of the tiers with their budgeting, and what falls into there is up to the capital planning committee as it gets done with that at the end of the year.
Well, the planning process up to, well, the planning process is not supposed to include numbers. Cost of projects and so on and so forth. It's supposed to look at the project itself and where it fits in the priority of the list of all projects. So, I remember a number of years back that they prioritized the projects with either no numbers attached to them or very preliminary numbers attached to them. And then once that was set up, then the numbers got attached to them, and then it fell into whatever we had available for that year.
But that's the thing, I guess that goes to two other questions. One, why does the town manager then get to reorganize what the capital planning committee did?
Charter,
But why?
that's all I can say.
But why
All I
isn't
can
in the
say is charter. That's why we need to seat a committee, and we need to go through every paragraph of that charter and reorganize this town and get the charter to spell out what this town needs, not what the charter says.
Right, because that just negates the purpose of the, other than being sort of a fact-finding committee to bring forward to the town manager, here's a list of things, now you go and do what you want. And it doesn't matter anyways as well, because the number at the end is not set until much later in the process. So it
Exactly.
doesn't matter what, so the pressure should not be on the capital planning committee at that point. It should be by the end of the year, end of the first quarter, end of February, something like that.
I don't think anybody on that committee would argue with that at all.
Okay, so that would take out at least one portion of it, but that doesn't make our job any easier.
Right. But the whole process either needs to happen expeditiously, which it hasn't for the last 2 years, there's been delays every inch of the way, or it needs to be pushed up earlier to leave room for the unanticipated delays so that you're not up against a deadline every single time you're trying to do something.
Right.
And trying to have a public hearing the same day that the final budget is presented, or, you know,
Right.
those types of things. It's just, that's not the way to do business, obviously.
Or a public hearing 3 days before our report is due.
Right.
Doesn't give us a chance to even meet before.
Yep.
As it stands, do we have any idea how many, it's too bad we don't have the finance director here. Do we have any idea how many budgets are done on spreadsheets versus on some municipal budgeting software?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I thought we were told that they don't have software
What I
other
thought
than
I heard
Excel
as well.
spreadsheet. Because that was on my list of things to talk about for the committee, is that there should, both the school and town budget should be on some software, the same software. And just too easy to make mistakes, but,
Well, that's not only that, with software, you're gonna end up with audit trails.
right, yeah.
Which is critical, as we
And I'm sure
found
they
this year.
they have routine, well, what if this happens? Well, you can put in scenarios, and okay, this happens, and it'll change all the appropriate things if you set it up right. So, to me, that would be an ease. One of the things I think for us is that it's like a one-shot deal. The DPW comes in and says, hey, here's our budget. Could they come in earlier with, well, this is so far how we're doing this year. And this is what we think we're going to be looking for next year. And they don't present, per se, a budget for us to approve, but to give us a sense of, well, you know what, we thought we were going to be able to do all this stuff, but because of X, Y, and Z, this is what's happening. Oh, okay, so now we know. And here's our expectations for next year. And we might question that. Well, you know, you want to do all that, but really our biggest problem is this, and have a discussion. So it's not all one and done. Then they come back later on and give us their full budget after the town manager, or this year will be the interim town manager probably, has a say in it. And to me, that way we get more whacks at it. And they don't have to be, and again, I don't want them to be spending 3 months putting together a presentation for us. It should be, you know, something they could do fairly easy and educate us on what's going on. And then the more educated we are, the better we'll be able to ask good questions.
Wow, at least attempt it, right?
Well,
Where is our
Yeah, the other piece of the budgeting process that we used to work through when we were on schedule with budgeting was that the town manager's proposed budget would come out early enough so that individual department heads came back to us, or that was their first round with us, actually, talking about the budget that's proposed by the town manager and justifying why they had certain things they were hoping the town manager would put back in, and basically looking for our support for those items above and beyond the town manager's proposed budget. We haven't had time, we haven't been able to do that, at least last year and I believe the year before, because everything gets compressed into such a short period of time. Then you get a real good look at the needs of the individual departments after they know what they assume they're getting, and come before us and plead for, these particular things are really near and dear to us, or should be near and dear to the town because of this reason. That's how you go into town meeting with a support for a budget, because it's all been vetted out before you go to the town meeting floor.
So looking at our budget calendar for FY '25. The capital improvement planning forms are issued to departments by September 11th. After that, December 4th is when the capital planning committee reviews all requests and begins prioritizing.
What was that date?
December 4th.
December 4th.
And then by January 2nd, they have finalized recommendations to provide to town manager. So
Basically,
month.
they have 1 month.
1 month. So 4 meetings at best.
And the budget process, terminating in town meeting is 5 months later.
The department budget requests were due to the town manager on January 4th. That seems incredibly late.
It's only 6 months into the budget.
But we should have forecasting at this point. I mean, by 6 months, we should be able to see, are we on track? Have we spent 50% of our budget? Or where are we
We can get that
overspending?
from the finance director. We should be getting the actuals quarterly.
Right.
To see where we're at.
Agreed. And that should
Or
help.
more often if we need to.
And that should help kind of drive, are you going to need to push more into this line for next year? Or are you going to be able to pull back from this line next year? At least get some preliminary stuff.
Yeah, we had none of that in this last cycle.
No.
None of it. The fourth quarter's closing on Monday or on Sunday, And we haven't seen anything on the third quarter.
No.
And as I said in a previous meeting, quarter two closeout had some red flags.
Yep.
So we don't know where that went from there through the third quarter, and we're already closing out the fourth quarter.
All right, so the next one was on the 18th of January. That's when we were supposed to hear our 5-year financial forecasts from the town manager, which we're still waiting on. And then February 5th, we get the town manager's budget summary is sent to the Lunenburg Ledger to be published. February 13th and 15th is the town manager's recommendation presentation. And then we start reviewing on the next week. And we meet weekly through the end of February, through all of March, and we meet a couple times a week at the end of March. So from February 15th until March 21st, we are meeting constantly.
And that's fine if we have all the information that we need to go over during that time period, but
I still don't think it is, because we get the school department's budget, the school committee budget, on March 20th or 21st. Actually, usually it's the Thursday, because they're voting on it the Wednesday before.
Right.
I don't know how they can get that to us any quicker, but and I'm not sure how we can move this back, because that's one of the biggest ones, because we need to be able to really dig through that if that's going to be 50% of our budget.
yeah. Well, it comes back to the question as to why towns like Groton and Dunstable and I think even Townsend can have their town meetings to vote their budgets 1 to 2 months before we do, and we keep getting told that, well, yeah, there's too many variables. Well, they deal with it. Why can't we?
I think it all comes down to forecasting.
Yeah.
We
agree.
have no forecast. We have no idea where we're going. We have historical trends, but we don't have, for some reason, we don't have the ability to project out,
Yeah.
which is not a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And the more you have to project out, the more the necessity for what we've already got in place, and those are accounts to protect ourselves against unexpected expenses like the reserve account, special purpose stabilization, all the stabilization accounts and stuff. That's why those are there. Because if you're setting your budget with even more variables than you have in the past, then that's where that money's going to need to come from at the last minute to make the adjustments on town meeting floor to cover it. I mean, the process is in place, we're just not using it.
And if I was going to write software to run the budget for a town, I would have it do all sorts of iterative calculations for the historical data, just pick a department, the DPW's gasoline budget, what they spent year over year, and then project out, and then as you fill in the next year, it goes back and says, okay, how's my trend? Do I need to adjust my forecasting? And you should be able to have that done for 5 years and print it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's the only other way that I could think that they're doing it as well, is that it's not just forecasting, it's how their forecasting is done. So somebody can go up to it, the finance director can go and just hit print. And here's every department, here's what we think they're gonna need. And I'm sure you can do constraining for growth and inflation, and
It's out there, but we're still in the 19th century.
I would argue 17th. So yes, our last presentation is done on the 21st of March, and then we have our public hearing the week after on the 28th. And then 5 days later, our report is due.
there isn't going to be a way to have that reasonable. So I'd like to be able to bring forward by the end of this discussion, not tonight's discussion, but the end of the discussion with the Finance Committee on this, sort of a list of suggestions or recommendations, or even if we could look into software packages or whatnot and say, look, here's what Groton does, or here's what other towns are doing, and here's how they're doing it. The towns that do have their town meetings in March and run on the same fiscal calendar, how are they able to do it without failing miserably? Any other thoughts for this one for this evening? Works for me. It's already getting late. I thought this was gonna be a quick one. All right, the second one is consolidation of services and departments. I think if anything, having a new town manager come on might actually be the perfect time to suggest this. So again, the same idea with this. I intend to keep it in the old business and kind of refer back to it and just do some research over the summer to see what other towns are doing, if there are other towns that have separate DPWs or separate facilities or whatnot, and ones that don't, and start, communicating with our peers essentially,
Yeah.
and seeing what other people are doing.
Yeah, to move the town forward, that really needs to be analyzed, and there needs to be some moves made. As we know, we've already had dialogue that pushes back against it. But I think we're going to find, as we reach out to other cities and towns that are already doing it differently, that we're going to find that it makes sense to do certain things a different way. And that's why I think this town is ready for a restructuring, top to bottom, in the way it does business 365 days a year. Consolidation is not going to save us money. It's probably going to cost us money, but the problem is that we have held back on the growth of our ability, growing our ability to deal with what needs to get done in this town on a day-to-day basis by holding back on hiring and expanding departments and creating efficiencies and consolidating, such as a very simple one, and there's a lot of moving pieces to it. But as we've seen with the facilities department now, the new contract for groundskeeping for the town's property starts on July 1. And over the last 2 or 3 years, that has pulled in to that one contract more and more properties, all the parks, and other areas that were being maintained other ways, whether it be by DPW workers or whatever. But it's all under a single contract and a single umbrella, so that there's efficiencies there. When a company bids an annual agreement to do stuff like that, it's almost always cheap. It's got to be cheaper than breaking that up into 5 different, I'm not going to say 5 different contracts, but doing part of it with contract services and then having staff on payroll pushing your OPED expenses and all that stuff up. If you're contracted, you know what your cost is, and you got a rough idea what your cost is going to be going forward. I mean, you can create a 3-year contract even and know exactly what you're going to be spending for groundskeeping or some aspect of facilities operations or whatever. That gives you a 3-year locked-in number or damn close to locked-in number. So then your forecasting gets much easier. The work gets done. And I don't know, it just makes so much sense that I don't know why there's pushback against it, except that there's turf wars.
I have noticed that the main arguments that I've heard are just, I don't want that.
Yeah,
That's the argument that I basically heard.
right. We've always done it this way, and I don't want that.
Right.
It's
Well,
hard.
That's
It's
gotta
a
be
hard
put
thing
in
to
the
do.
closet.
Change is always hard.
Yep.
And, I mean, I don't know what I mean, I think someone should a group should look into it and obviously see what kind of improved services, reduction of costs, both capital and operating costs, and all that, but it might be hard, but that doesn't mean you don't do it, to me. You just need to look at it. And there's a few of them in town, and I think we should push for that. I think part of the budget task force should be to look at that. That should be, other than getting software, and also that. I mean, those are the two biggest ones I can think of.
Yep. Yeah, I'm planning on bringing that up with the budget.
Right.
If it's not brought up by select person MKey, I'm planning to push a consolidation study, for sure.
And like I said, in my mind, I don't see it eliminating positions. I see it actually creating a need to add positions. But we've held back for so long that needs to happen. We kind of went through the budget season and more or less said, well, the town's not in great shape, but we don't need an override. But we don't need an override because we don't have the structure that we should have. That's the only reason we didn't need an override.
If you look at our org charts outside of the fire department and the police department, it's basically department head and then a single tier and then maybe 2 people down.
Right.
And that's basically it, which that's not, you can run it. You can't just have a ton of managers.
Right.
There's nothing else to manage at that point. I think the big one for me is going to be having a single consolidated healthcare line. So that when we hear from department heads saying we'd like to increase hours for this position, or we would like to add a new position for this, here's the budgetary impact. Some departments know what it's gonna cost with the healthcare because it's in their lines, the schools, and some departments have no idea what it's gonna cost with the healthcare. And that's not how we should be being presented with new salary increases. I think it should simply just be, this is the bottom line, and then here's the healthcare impact as well. I don't know if that's a charter thing, why the healthcare is in the school department budget. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I know that our largest health insurance line, but it's still paid out of the same, it's one bill that's paid
Right.
town-wide. It's not the school's bill and the town's bill.
Yeah. I also, just what came out of last year's budget process, I also truly feel that the conversion from a non-benefited position to something benefited, the jump should be to a minimum of 36 hours. I don't think we should be playing this game of adding 5 or 6 hours to a position, which, as we discussed, kicks in all of those costs, whether they take them or not, they have to be budgeted. Move it to that 36-hour or whatever that window is that we do for a 4-day week people. And I think the town, over the long run, will get more out of each one of those positions as they're grown from non-benefited to benefited positions. Adding 1 or 2 hours, jumping them into that next stage, the town's really not gaining anything. And it's really important, I believe, that all of the positions in town need to be oriented towards the needs of the town, not the needs of the person in that position. That's extremely important. I mean, you got to have some compassion, yes, I understand that, but the end of the day, the job descriptions need to be what the town needs, not what fits a person that happens to be in that position or is going to come into that position.
If it's a full-time position, does it have to be salary? Or can we pay hourly at full-time?
I can't answer that question.
Usually managerial is salary.
Right. You get to exempt or non-exempt, basically, right?
Right, and that's,
I don't know how it works on
Defined
the
by law.
municipality side. Well,
yeah, they've been talking about even trying to move that around a bit too, so.
in the private sector or in the
Well,
municipal sector?
well, the private sector, which the government says, oh, this person's a supervisor, even though they don't supervise anybody, but, then they get to work 90 hours a week and make less than minimum wage or something.
Right.
So, there's all sorts of games that they can play, but I think there's some regs. I'm not sure about if cities and towns, if they're different than the private sector, but.
Because then I wonder if going to that idea where if you're saying, okay, this person's working 15 hours a week and we want to move them up to, a benefited position, it jumps to 36 hours, but if they're being paid hourly and they only work 25 hours a week with a maximum of 36 hours a week, then you're never going to hit your ceiling that you budgeted for, which then you have money to return back at the end.
Right.
Versus, oh, shoot, we have this person's a salaried position making X number of dollars per year, but that's houred at 36 hours, but they're only working 20 hours a week. I don't know if that's an option.
Also, if you do some consolidation, then you have more people in the department, and that changes how you manage hours and all that. So I think, it's, when there's one person doing one thing, and then they need 5 more hours to do it because of the, then it goes from, 17 now to 23, well, if there was 5 people doing, in the department, then they could figure out a way to get that work done. And as you mentioned, if I only have one employee, then what am I really, I don't have a lot of options. If I have 6, then I can say, oh, we're going to focus on that problem at the school. And then we'll worry about, then I have all those people working on that, then I can go and deal with the town hall.
Maybe we can go
'Cause
back
it's-
to being open 5 days a week?
Yeah, I think that's
We should look at.
I don't,
Yeah, it'll be interesting when we bring on a new town manager as to what that person's take is on 4-day week versus 5-day week in a municipality. I'm not sure that it's a fair question to ask of them in the first 6 months, but maybe. I mean,
good interview
if
question.
they've had experience with it in another town or city or town, then, that's something that could be a plus. And I hope that we bring in a manager that is ready to bring their management skills to the table and not be afraid that this isn't the way you've done it in the past, but this is the way I manage things, as long as it, for the time being, stays within the realm of the charter. I hope we get a strong manager that comes in and does the things that need to be done for our town to function properly, because we're not functioning properly now on almost all levels. My personal opinion.
They haven't received any interim town manager applications yet, Dave.
That tells you that the more we talk about the fact that we're in a deep hole,
Yeah,
the
or
more that
Miss Gilman.
the more that people don't, even out of retirement for 6 months, don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that every single day. It's like, God, there's a lot of things that need to be done, but I'm not ready to dive into this stuff. I'm on the other end.
Okay. Any other discussion on this one for tonight?
I think we're good for now.
My plan is to kind of pull together notes as we're going through these and create little documents for them that we can kind of add on to or remove from and have sort of working documents, and hopefully they lead somewhere. Worst case, they end up in the trash, but
Yeah.
I think it, maybe not. Maybe they'll get stuck in a folder somewhere.
I think on another night, when if we have a very light schedule and we have a full committee here, that we might kick all that around again and drill down a little further and see, kind of talk out scenarios and get them down as a document that we also pass on to the study committee.
Yep.
That, this is what we foresee as prudent moves to consolidate. We haven't vetted the issues or so on and so forth, but this is just our first round.
That's exactly.
This is what we came up with.
That's exactly what my thought was.
Yep.
Same idea.
I have a feeling that the budget review committee will be, there, we'll be talking about, as this going on, you'll be presenting, hey, this is what we talked about. And we can throw in our 2 cents, and you can go back to the committee and say, hey, this is what, here's some better ideas. Because the more heads, the better. And also, if you're just the one person in there recognizing it, also things get done better with fewer people. But more heads thinking about it and then having a little, not input, but just a say, or sometimes you just kind of say, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, I think I'm still kind of wrestling with how I want to handle that. Because I think the budget task force is intimately tied to the finance committee and should be, I think should have input from the finance committee as well, not just from a single representative of the finance committee. So I think whether that results in just sort of a document that gets submitted to the finance committee on a weekly or however often the budget task force is meeting, that we can then discuss at our meeting, that can then be kind of brought forward, so we have this kind of recycling back through the information to readdress it. I haven't given it too much thought, but I do want to make sure that we have, the committee has an opportunity to discuss the same stuff that the budget task force is discussing, because it's sort of our job as well. All right, back to old business again. I don't think we're going to have too much of an update on the town manager search committee representative, other than it's still.
I could give you a little if you don't mind. I
Please.
did attend the meeting.
I didn't actually talk to Tim yet.
Right.
So.
And I was going to make it in public comment, but I'll do it now where it's a agenda item. And I'll just be very short and brief, because I want to make sure I don't get it wrong, so. But anyway, they had a very good discussion. Tim Murphy has been through 2 of these in the past in his years as the moderator. So he brought packets of information from especially the last round when Heather was hired, and shared that with the committee, and they reviewed that back and forth, didn't read the whole document, but went through that process. They are meeting aggressively over the next few weeks to finalize their document to advertise the position. And as I said earlier, very optimistically, they're shooting for 4 to 5 months, but they really don't know if that's going to work out or not. I think I had one other point, but I can't think of what it was right at the moment. I was just going to state for the public's information that all meetings are public meetings of that committee. They will be posted, just like all our other meetings, on the bulletin board out front, on the town website, on the calendar, and they will all be available through Zoom unless there's an electronic problem. So, and they did vote or decide or in agreement that they will have public comment allowed
Good.
during,
Good.
at some point of the meeting. I don't remember if this is the beginning or the end, but I just wanted to get that out to the public so that, you know, if you want to keep up with where that process is, how it's progressing, you can actually see the meetings. They'll be recorded and they'll be available up on YouTube.
Excellent. Very good to hear. All right, on to the Budget Task Force. We officially have a Budget Task Force now. The Select Board did vote to create one, so I'm not alone. Ms. Emke is the Select Board representative. Mr. Scullambrini is the School Committee representative, and Ms. Brzezowski is the alternate if the meetings take place during the day and he's in court. She'll step in for the School Committee. I believe I may not have forwarded this, and I apologize. I thought I had forwarded the Budget Task Force charge to the committee.
You did.
Okay, thank goodness. But they did put together, Ms. Emke did put together a document for the charge of the Budget Task Force, and it's pretty aggressive. It calls for a recommendation and presentation of its findings and recommendation to the school board, the finance committee, and the school committee, the select board, excuse me, the finance committee and the school committee, no later than December 31st of this year. So that's going to be a busy meeting. There are 3 sections to it. The first one is a general section, where it's being charged with recommending scenarios for a 3 to 5 year sustainable fiscal plan for the town of Lunenburg, which I think will help to address our budget process, I hope. It defines a sustainable fiscal plan as a financial forecast that uses realistic assumptions for revenue and expenditure growth that allow the town to provide services that meet residents' expectations and meet ongoing expenditure obligations through regularly occurring revenues. The second one is the tasks and responsibilities, and there's a number of them. I'll just go through them really quickly. To collect data on revenue and expenditures, historical trends, and project future estimates based on trends and various assumptions. That's what I'm hoping will be able to be used for our departments and planning out what we're going to need for the next fiscal year. Benchmarking municipal and school performance programs, expenditures, and revenues with comparable municipalities. That is going to be a nightmare. There's a lot of good information on DESI's website, but to find a there's so many different categories to compare to find a peer municipality is going to be very difficult, so I hope we'll be able to find at least 1 or 2. To examine potential revenue sources, overrides, and exclusions under Prop 2.5, as well as non-tax and non-override revenue sources in compliance with the town financial policy, including costs, feasibility, potential savings, and other impact of potential adoption and implementation, cuts in service, contracting out of services, as well as other measures. Evaluate strategies to properly staff municipal and school operations while managing growth and personal costs. So I think that's going to incorporate the consolidation portion. Analyze capital project funding needs and impacts, including long-term capital projects. Include both operational and capital budgets in the fiscal plan recommendations. And lastly, assess the impact and any increased taxes and fees will have on taxpayers and residents, including the tax impact of debt exclusions related to large capital projects under consideration. The last portion is just the membership and meetings. It is going to be a 7-member task force. one member of the select board, one member of the school committee, one member of the finance committee, the town manager, the school superintendent, the town finance director, and the school finance director as well.
We don't have a town manager.
Correct. So it's currently a 6-member committee. Actually, it won't be a full 6-member committee until I think July 1st, I think July 1st is when the school finance director starts as well. So it's currently a 5-member committee. All members have voting powers. There is no set time for when and where we're going to meet. But there will be your standard chair, vice chair, and clerk. And then there'll be minutes, and it will be recorded and whatnot. And that was basically it. So that's the overall charge. I assume it's on the website by now, but if it's not, we should probably get it up on the website. Ms. Emke is going to reach out. I was talking with her today. She's going to reach out in the next day or so to start doing a straw poll for when we can meet. So I'm hoping it's going to be pretty soon, because 6 months is going to come really quickly. This is a lot of work.
Well, you always got Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
I encourage you to try that on my side on my family and see how well that goes. I will very quickly no longer be on the finance committee.
Coming from a retired resident whose children are, in their 30s, and yes, I understand. I really do.
We can meet at the soccer field. That's what we'll do. We'll set up cameras. But I am encouraged, and I'm hoping we'll have some public interaction as well.
Well, is this going to be a public, are they going to be meeting in public and like, is that what they're going to be doing?
Her last note says that the recording of minutes and votes of all meetings as prescribed by open meeting law, and copies of the minutes shall be submitted to the town clerk. But she didn't say anything about where the meetings are going to be held. I mean, I'm assuming if it's open meeting law, it's going to have to be, if it's going to be recorded.
Be an open meeting.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think until we have a chair and until we've established kind of the framework,
Right.
I can't imagine they're not going to have some type of public comment or public interaction. I think it's pretty critical. Maybe not at the beginning, while they're still kind of figuring out what the heck they're going to do. But I will certainly push for having public conversation.
That'll help keep it under 3.5 hours.
Well, if Mr. Scolambrini's on it, he's going to push for under an hour, which I love. It's going to be great. Let's see, we have already gone through the last item with Rep. Scarsdale, so that just brings us down to minutes. Danielle had sent out one set of minutes from June 13th. We already did, I believe, May 23rd last week. Yes, we did May 23rd last week, so we are just on the minutes from June 13th. Has anyone, I've read them, I don't know if anyone else has.
I have to.
Okay. Happy.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes of June 13th as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approving minutes of June 13th?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are 5-0 unanimous. Excellent. Committee reports. I'm going to go down the line. Mr. Passios?
Let's see. Green Communities has not met since we last met. We were scheduled for Monday, but I do not see anything up on the town calendar. So I'm guessing the agenda didn't get sent in or something. I haven't sorted that out yet. We have set up a pretty aggressive schedule to make sure that we're not up against deadlines in October. I've been doing a little bit of legwork behind the scenes with Mr. Heavey in regards to the mini split project and working with Kelly Brown to sort out how we bring that proposal forward through Green Communities versus how it's actually happening. And there are ways to make it work so that we can, we've got a good potential, at least at this point, to get Green Communities funding that could cover most, if not all, of Phase 2. But that's still up in the air because the data hasn't been vetted yet. Facilities Director is also working on a few smaller projects. Mr. Heavey actually has one or two that might fit in there if we have some money left over from the original, from the first ask for the bigger project. So we're committed to putting in a application in the fall, in October. I think it's October 17th, I think is the deadline. And try to maximize out to the full amount that we're able to ask for in that grant round.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with that.
All right. Any committee reports, Ms. Russell? No?
Nope.
Mr. Gray? Mr. Simeoni?
No, I've listened to a couple on YouTube, but I haven't retained anything to write down to report. I'm usually driving when I'm listening to them.
Yep. It's tough to write them down. I only have, mine aren't actual really committee reports, but I meant to bring this up at the top of the meeting. I reached out to Bill Bernard for the DPW to discuss the Chapter 90 funding and invite him to come to the one of our meetings. And I presented to him all of our dates, the 2 in July, the 2 in August, and the 2 in September. He said he should be able to make any one of those dates. So does anyone have a preference for meeting with DPW earlier in the summer versus later in the summer? Okay.
Whatever works.
Okay, perfect. I also reached out to the Cemetery Commission to invite them as well. I received a message back from Ms. Yasko that they are going to she's going to have it on their agenda for the next meeting in July. She wants to bring it up to them first and have a discussion before she actually brings it over this way. She said she's happy to come and talk to us, though, but because of their meeting, she's going to suggest either the August or September meetings for us, just so they have a time to do that. She also suggested that we invite our town finance director, Ezekiel, as he's going to have a lot more knowledge of the funds and rules and the regulations pertaining to the town's accounting policies. So I was asking her about the sale of cemetery plots fund and how the investments are done with that, and wanted to talk about, using interest only and whatnot, and then other investment strategies that they're utilizing. And then she also recommended inviting Attorney Costa because he'll have a deeper understanding of the state level rules and regulations for this stuff as well. Mm-hmm. So, does anybody have any preference for? I haven't responded back yet. I wanted to wait until I talked to the committee before I sent that out back.
I think that suggestion of the 3 people coming, if we can pull that off, is prudent, because then any questions are, well, how does this work or how does that work? With those 3 people here, they'll be able to answer it, as you said, from all aspects, from the financial side, from the legal side, and from the cemetery commissioner's side. So I think that's the way to do it, because it's, we have these conversations and we don't have many times we don't have the expert knowledge. We're just kicking around thoughts.
And I had presented it to her as saying I wanted to have a sort of a stake in the mud that we could report back to and say, this is where you want to go. If you have questions about it, here's the discussion, and we can kind of point to it there. So if we can have it all in one meeting, I agree.
Yep.
She did say that she would prefer just to, have her come by herself, so that way we don't have to actually, it's not a joint meeting or anything like that, but just have kind of a discussion with her directly. Any other thoughts on this?
I don't think we need a lawyer there.
Okay.
It's costing money.
Doesn't cost us anything.
Why not?
Because he's on retainer.
It's covered under our retainers.
Well, if it's not cost us anything, I'm okay with it. We're paying for it.
I'll make sure to put that in the email that I send back, as long as it's covered under the retainer.
After the meeting, come come up with a list of questions, send them. But
No, I agree completely.
I'm not paying to sit here.
Jay, I don't disagree with you. If there was
Yeah.
going to be an extra invoice, yeah.
I agree
get
it
it.
should be covered under the retainer, but
Okay.
I'm not sure if that, to what extent his retainer is included
Yeah,
for, if it's just
exactly.
beyond town meeting or.
There
town
may be a
manager.
requirement for the town manager to approve
Okay,
his attendance. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but
Yeah,
Okay.
how much is left in the retainer?
that's a good point, too. It hasn't gone up in the last few years, I've noticed as well, so maybe we should invite him.
End of the year. Well, we'll be in the new year by then.
Yeah.
New budget by then.
Okay, so I'll respond to both of them then, and set those meetings up, and we can kind of go forward with those two. I think those were our 4 main topics for the summer. So I'll start funneling those through as well, once we get those. Other than that, I have no other committee reports. The school committee did meet last night. I did not watch it. I enjoyed not watching a meeting. But I did send a message off to Ms. Archambault, and she let me know who the representative for the budget task force was going to be. So that's the only reason why I know. But I will go back and watch their meeting as well, so I'll have something to report next time. Any topics for future meetings?
Yes, I have a request, I don't know what this falls under, but I would like to hear, well, I would like to have our facilities director give us reports at our meetings, similar to the way this facilities director for the school reports to the school committee. I know facilities runs, he attends parks and recreation meetings on a regular basis. He was at the parks the other night. Infrastructure is one of our biggest issues, and I would like to hear directly from the facilities director regarding our infrastructure issues. I don't like getting third-party information.
Do you want to have that become a reoccurring meeting?
Yes, I'd like
Okay.
that be on our agenda as facilities director report.
Okay.
Similar to town manager and finance director reports.
Okay. Happily send them a note.
as a follow-up to the review we did of our accounts invested, that list that Mylene sent to us, I'd like an updated snapshot of that and see if we see the same things we saw the last time we reviewed it,
Okay.
to, see if we need to maybe reiterate our recommendations a second time.
I think that might be a good topic for the budget task force as well. If we're going to look into revenues, I mean, that's an income generation portion right there. If we're investing better and just spending off of the interest. I think that's a good one to put.
The only
But yes,
reason I bring
agree.
it up is because, the library was very clear as to, was it library or was it PAC? No, it must have been library. That their adjustment of their investments has yielded them a sizable amount of interest income. And I'm hearing that there's another entity that's trying to do that and is running into a stone wall.
Okay.
So I'd like to see if any changes have been made through our suggestions or concerns that we weren't making anywhere near what we should be. And, for every 6 months we let that ride, that's potentially 4 or 5% of whatever that principal amount is, every 6 months or so. So it's sizable money that we're
We're
letting
talking
fall off the table.
millions of dollars that we have invested
Yeah.
across many different accounts, split up against a whole bunch of different accounts, earning piddly.
Right. And again, that's, I think we'd be extremely fortunate if we come up with a new town manager that is very strong in finance and management. I hope we do. That's what we need. We need somebody who can you know,
Both sides.
is strong at the financial side of it and strong at the management side, or somebody who's demonstrated they can bring in people around them to make that happen. And that's, in all my training as a manager over the years in private sector, that was a key point that was pushed in every single seminar. You know, don't think that you're gonna be able to do it all by yourself, but bring people around you that can do it.
I wonder if we might want to reach out to Ezekiel then as well. We haven't really, he's been getting up to speed.
Right.
But we haven't really started to kind of tapping into his knowledge base or his expertise or whatnot. I genuinely do not know how
Right.
far his expertise goes into
the
investment
only-
strategies and whatnot.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
You're
you. The only reason I presented it this way is that it's the town treasurer's realm. You know, so, yes, Ezekiel's expertise will probably help in the discussion, but I don't know how deep his responsibilities delve into the actual investment versus reporting the results of the investment.
Is it the treasurer's I thought the treasurer's responsibility sort of
Financial
ended
advisor?
Right, that's where I would go, would be more the financial advisor of the town. Because I don't know if the treasurer or the collector is responsible for that investment as well.
Well, you've got a collector and you have a treasurer,
Well,
they're actually two different
Finance
jobs.
director,
Aren't they the same person though?
They're the same person, but
Right.
they are two different responsibilities.
Okay. But I would
I would think it'd be the finance director would be responsible for investments.
Right.
But the financial advisor.
okay.
And again, maybe we don't have the responsibilities, the division of responsibilities clear, and if nothing else, we get clarification of that.
To me, it makes sense that it would be like the finance director, because he or she would be the one who knows the cash flow needs, and, you know, so if you're gonna tier your investments and so on, so you can make sure you have the money available when you need it, that's the person who would know best. And
Well, it's also how it affects the budget, how much, you know, that income is, how much of that's part of the budget.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to know how much of this is also tied into the financial policy of the town and what we already have set up. I genuinely don't know either. If there's already, I'm sure it's probably not in the charter, it's not gonna be that granular, but the select board's financial policy, I haven't been through that in too long, probably.
But as Mylene said, that, you know, on that list, there were reserve funds, stabilization funds, trust funds, and there are limitations on many of those that are different for each account. But as Mr. Menard brought up when we were reviewing that list, that some of the ones with the big dollar amounts in them were still sitting at 1 point something% or under 1%.
Yep.
And we never got a clear answer as to were those by statute limited to be in that type of investment or not. And again, if we sit on it for another year, then we've lost thousands of dollars again. That's potential interest income.
Right. Okay, I will happily bring this forward as well. Realizing that I think I put in the calendar, or in the important dates, I think I put the wrong date. And I just want to double check for my email to make sure that because I wrote that the meeting with Rep. Scarsdale is on the 12th, and I will be here on the 12th, so I don't think I got that right. I just want to make sure. Okay, so that is an error on my part, the important dates. It is not it's not July 12th, it is July 19th, from 9 to 11 a.m. So that's the next important date coming up. And I'll send a note out and have some more clarification on that before our next meeting, so we don't have to wait for 2 weeks.
Other than that, we are scheduled to have a meeting on the 11th and the 25th. Is anybody not going to be here for any of those meetings? Often
July 11th.
July 11th and July 25th, yes.
Either one of those dates, if I'm not in town, I'll be on Zoom.
Okay. All right, we'll plan to
Yeah, I
host.
think I should be here for
Okay.
both of them.
If anything changes, let me know. We have, since we have 7 people now, we can actually afford to have 1 or 2 not here. With that, is there any public comment from the public? Is there any public? I don't see any public.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Any public comment from the committee?
I've got 2 things left on my list here. Anybody that watched the Select Board meeting from, I believe, 3 weeks ago, I made a public comment as a citizen and taxpayer in town. They had discussed their still outstanding unappropriated ARPA funding during that meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I had a list that I had pulled from the 10-year capital list that was circulated in the early capital planning process, and implored them to really take a look at a number of the small projects in there, basically infrastructure projects that will either stop the degradation of one of our public buildings, i.e. the public safety building, where the roof repair did not make the cut for capital planning. They got a roof leaking over there that's damaging the facade over the office area, and the longer that goes, the more damage and the more cost it's going to be. And I think it was a $60 price tag, $60,000 price tag, and they're working with somewhere in the realm of $300,000 in unappropriated ARPA funds. There were a couple other projects, and unfortunately I didn't bring the list with me. But my list totaled $280,000 of 4 projects that could potentially help move forward with engineering for a future project, and get a couple of these infrastructure things, small dollar amounts, to get them off the books with ARPA money rather than tax revenue monies. I think one of them actually was the Boys and Girls Club.
Floor.
The floor, second floor. And I made this comment at the meeting. I said, you know, my 60th class reunion was 2 years ago, and we toured that building, and that floor was atrocious 2 years ago. The carpet on the stairs leading up to the second floor had tears in it. You hook your foot on it, you're gonna roll down the stairs. If it's still in that condition, you know, we need to get that done for $30,000, you know, or that's the estimate anyway. So I made that pitch. Again, it's totally up to the select board as to how they end up spending that additional money. There's still more and more concern as to the definition of committed funds.
Yep.
And I just hope at the end of the day, the federal government doesn't come down with what may be the definition, and that means contracted.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they're, you know, starting to, a couple of the members anyway are getting nervous that, you know, we got to stop messing around with, you know, pet projects that can't possibly be finished within that time frame, or at least contracted within that time frame, and do something substantive that brings us forward and into better condition after the money's spent.
And beyond that, if the contracted, if it's a $200,000 appropriation from the select board, and they have a contract for $100,000 for phase 1, and they're committed for phase 2, do we lose $100,000 then?
Yeah,
Is it
right,
partially?
and that's,
There's a lot of questions with that.
yeah, there still are. I mean, it boils down to, it sounds like that if you have a shovel-ready project and you can get it out to bid and contracted by the end of this year and completed by the end of next year, that's the safest way to spend that money, to make sure it's gone, because after the end of this year, we can't take leftover money or take money back like we did from the school projects and reallocate it.
Yep. It's
gone. You know, if we don't spend it one way or another, or have it committed properly, we lose it. So, and one of our select board members has said multiple times that there better not be a single penny left unappropriated. So, you know, they're aware, but they keep, I don't know, revolving, committing, uncommitting, and it's gonna come back to bite us if we don't get buckled down to it. The last item I have is a continuation of my beginning of the meeting, public comment about my outreach to Senator Cronin's office. And I did this purposely, because I know there's at least a handful of people that I know that either watch tonight or will see this tape in the future and say, oh God, there he goes, he's proposing legislation that will allow the town to tax us even more. Well, I just want people to know that that is not my intent. What I'm looking for is the ability to be able to implement a local income tax, but at the same time, and this could be done with no changes to Prop 2.5, but at the same time, reduce the percentage that we increase our budget by under 2.5 by some given amount, and flip it over to a percentage of local income tax. And what that accomplishes is that it shifts some of the burden of the revenue needs of the town away from our fixed income seniors and our young families trying to move into town and survive on lower salaries. So it's kind of a shifting, I personally am not looking to tax the people of Lunenburg more. I'm just looking for a mechanism where we can shift the burden and still have the same amount of revenue. So I wanted to make that clear, but I wanted to let people sit through the meeting and be all fired up that I'm proposing more taxes.
This may be one of the few times you and I agree on taxes, Dave. I like that idea.
And it is done in other states, it's just that Massachusetts, for one reason or another, and I don't know the history, somebody attempted it in 17 and it's never been brought up again.
Lobbying.
Yeah.
Any other public comment from the committee? All right, happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Scared me for a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 9:23 PM, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Don't forget to leave the meeting, Dave, since you're running it.
Oh. I'll leave it open for the next 14 hours.
That's fine. Make it look really good on YouTube.
What do I have to do, just exit?
Just exit out.
Oh, yeah.